This is the American Educational Television Network. This is the American Educational Television Network. The event is the birth of a new and innovative educational concept of brilliant promise. By viewing what is about to unfold, you are joining us in taking the first step across a long-standing demarcation line in American education. With these initial transmissions, we are closing the door forever on what many educators have felt to be an endless educational wasteland, pockmarked with failed obligations and lost opportunities. Ahead waits the challenge of the 1980s, and beyond that, the 21st century. For the American society to remain viable and to build on its present base will require the best from us all. Particularly is this true for those engaged in the fields of academics and communications. Ours is a special responsibility. In an era of the most explosive change that the world has ever experienced, we are now faced with not only an absolute necessity to combine our skills and our strengths to communicate evolving knowledge to scores of disciplines, but to do so with a swiftness and an accuracy that until now could only be imagined. Out of these needs, this American necessity, is born the American Educational Television Network. In Washington, D.C. stands one of America's most popular shrines to man's everlasting drive to expand his frontiers, the National Air and Space Museum. Dedicated to all those who have devoted their lives to the exploration of air and space, the museum is a treasure house of vehicles that mark each step of man's continuing journey to the stars. A journey that began 77 years ago on December 17, 1903, with the Wright brothers' Flyer, the first powered, heavier-than-air machine to carry a person. The Wright brothers, of course, were Wilbur and Orville. To them must go the credit for launching man's most incredible adventure. In a day of jumbo jets and space travel, Charles Lindbergh's incredible solo journey in the frail-looking Spirit of St. Louis across 3,600 miles spanning the Atlantic from Long Island to Le Bourget Field just outside Paris continues to inspire awe and admiration. The epic flight took place on May 20th and 21st, 1927. It is fitting, then, that we launch our initial network transmission from this shrine among these artifacts that mark the early milestones along the road in man's journey to the stars. Here is the chairman of the board and president of the American Educational Television Network, Mr. N.N. Bill Luxon.
I think it's fitting that I talk to you today from our nation's capital, and especially the Air and Space Museum, because it's only through the technology that is so well displayed here that we as a network are able to bring through cable television systems throughout the country the finest continuing education programming available in the nation to more than 30 million practicing professionals in city, county, state, and federal employees. Exactly how we do that is to appoint strategic advisory committees in each particular disciplinary area to select only the finest existing programs that are currently being delivered live throughout the nation by either academicians or practitioners themselves. We then in West Coast studios convert those programs into very high quality multimedia presentations, which simply means good television with extensive use of graphics and on-location production, accompanied by collateral text and computerized test systems. Thus, We are going to be doing and producing programming for nurses on the basis of one continuing education accredited program per month, for real estate licensees on the basis of one continuing education accredited program a month, for the nation's firefighters, who are represented by the International Association of Firefighters, made up of all the full-time firemen currently employed throughout the country, and the finest graduate courses in public administration from the University of Southern California School of Public Administration. This courseware is going to be delivered on a monthly basis, will be fully accredited, and will be publicized in all of the newsletters and journals that reach the particular group of practitioners for whom the programming is produced, whether they be nurses, accountants, lawyers, again, governmental employees, or others.
The Lincoln Memorial. No American in the history of our country, in or out of government, understood better or appreciated more the benefits of education than the man who was honored here, Abraham Lincoln. Today, some 116 years after the death of the man from Illinois, we feel that Lincoln would rest easier in the knowledge that today's Americans continue to reaffirm his faith in the power of education. A faith expressed in modern terms by another Midwest lawyer, Mr. Robert H. Peterson of Omaha, Nebraska, the president of NORELO, the National Association of Real Estate Licensed Law Officials.
The National Association of Real Estate Licensed Law Officials is an organization formed 50 years ago. It's an organization of all of the real estate commissions in the United States. These are the state agencies that regulate, license and regulate the people in the real estate industry, the brokers and the salesmen. Our organization, realizing that in these inflationary times, practically all of a person's net worth or value is tied up in their home. And this is the thing that the real estate people deal with. Because of the importance of the fact that the people who deal in real estate are probably making one of the largest transactions they ever make in their life, we feel that it's very important that they are competent, that they keep up with their education, that they understand the tremendous changes that are being made in this industry. We encourage education for this purpose.
At the House of Representatives on Capitol Hill, and from his vantage point as a member of the Space Science Subcommittee of the House Science and Technology Committee, Congressman Robert Dornan, Republican of California, also watches with more than casual interest the development of ATN. As a legislator, Dornan is convinced that the nation's future progress demands a renewed commitment to educational excellence from both public and private sectors.
When a professional person wants to increase their skills, the way nurses will use this, and even doctors, I believe, will be watching surgery in some special case in Boston, and they'll watch it in Hawaii and San Francisco and Florida. This is just a magnificent tool that can only be used in the free world, and I know it's rough economically, as anything is in the beginning. I'd tell the new businessmen involved in cable television, think of those two bicycle guys, Wilbur and Orville Wright, and what's happened in just 75 years. I think you could collapse that 75 years down to 5 or 10, and I defy the most prophetic of people involved in cable television to tell us exactly what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years. Nobody knows. It's just has an explosive, dreamlike quality to it, what we can do to educate this people.
Thus far, we have examined the advent of continuing adult education by satellite and television from points of view ranging from technical to governmental to professional. But what of the cable television industry? As the principal delivery vehicle for ATN's programming, what, if anything, is at stake for cable TV, and specifically for the cable system operator?
Hello, I'm Tom Wheeler, the president of the National Cable Television Association, and I want to welcome the American Educational Television Network to the cable television family. It seems to me that what American Educational TV Network is all about is the essence of what cable television is all about. For too long, the people have been limited in how they could get information through the preferred video medium. and they've been limited simply because there were only a very few television outlets in each city. With the spectacular growth in cable television, we are going to find that that limitation is being overcome, and new opportunities for information to reach consumers are going to be created. And American Educational Television Network is a primary example of that. It seems to me that this new enterprise comes on the scene at just the right time, where you have some significant changes taking place. As the society becomes more complex, and as the need for continuing education of key sectors of the society becomes more and more imperative, you at the same time have a revolution taking place in communications in the form of cable television that allows that need to be met around the time and around the convenience, almost, if you will, of the person who needs the additional education. You have this also happening at a time when we are looking at increasing transportation problems, increasing energy problems, and instead of the people who need the additional information having to go out and get it, that information is going to be coming to them through the narrowcasting capabilities of cable television. This is what cable is all about, the idea of collecting specific audiences and delivering needed information to those audiences. It is the idea of making those audiences responsible for the generation and the funding of the programs, and not having to go through a third-party advertiser, public institution, or whomever. So I want to commend the American Educational Television Network for the vision that they have in seizing upon this opportunity. I want to salute the cable operators of America who are working together with American Educational Television to bring this reality into the homes of the people of America.
There are more than 30 million people who may be defined as practicing professionals in the United States. The disciplines they practice are far too numerous to list here, but among their number is one group in particular that is all too often taken for granted. After all, aren't firemen always there when we need them? And how much expertise is required for fighting fires anyway? With some answers, here is John A. Gannon, President of the International Association of Firefighters in Washington, D.C.
The International Association of Firefighters has 177,000 firefighters, and there are 13,000 that are Canadians, the rest are Americans. Some of our major problems naturally are in the field of education. We need to keep progress with the newest techniques that are coming about and the chemicals that are being developed. And our people have to become more educated.
Does what is happening to the entire society today also affect you in this way? Change comes so fast now that it's very difficult to keep up in the old traditional means, such as using the mails or using printed materials. And having a 6-month lag time, say, between the time a new development is introduced and the time that you can promulgate that information to your members, for example. Do you find that to be a problem in the firefighting business?
Yes, it is a problem, and I think the electronic system of educating will bring that about so that we can be more advanced and ready for those kinds of problems, and that we're informed. Science is moving rapidly today, and we, the firefighters, have to keep abreast with that.
We have discussed at some length the need for better, swifter, and less costly continuing education throughout the length and the breadth of America. And we have examined the problem from a variety of viewpoints. For a determination, then, of ATN's ultimate contribution to the nation's ongoing educational needs, it perhaps remains only to elicit the verdict and the opinions of the final authority in such matters, the professional educator. For this purpose, we have taken our cameras to the School of Public Administration, University of Southern California in Los Angeles. Here, one of the most highly acclaimed public administration courses in the nation is administered and taught by Dean Robert P. Biller.
Okay, we're at about the 8th week of our internships now, and if you remember, we started focusing on a couple of questions like, how do you land a job? And once you land a job, how do you land well? What are the things you do when you get started? Well, about 2 months have passed now, and we've had a little conversation around what are you learning about what makes it then work well? What are the skills a professional uses in making sure that you get better through time, you develop access to information, people come to trust you more, and how do you get your job done? Now, ombudsperson, we were just working on one. Say the one we were just working on.
We were working on how you meet people in the office and use your initiative to make more contacts and develop contacts.
Yeah. And the fact that somehow everybody in an organization feels they ought to know what's going on. And when they don't, they are reluctant to ask a dumb question. And you, if you're a professional who's capable of asking a dumb question, you'll make everyone else feel much more secure by introducing yourself the way Joe was saying, or asking a question that other people want to ask and just don't feel able to. So being sure to allow, ask dumb questions, and be willing to take the initiative in the way that Lynn was just saying, around the coffee breaks, around going out to lunch with somebody.
Sure, using your break time, not just as a break, but as a good moment to initiate contacts and with different departmental staff.
Yeah, okay, that's good. What's another one?
I think getting to know the secretary in many offices is very, very important, particularly in ours. She definitely knows a lot of information, and if asked, she'll give some suggestions as to what you should do, and she knows what methods the boss really is more responsive to, which I think is very important.
And what are the skills of doing that? How do you encourage or take seriously support personnel, like secretaries, staff assistants, other people with access to information who can really help you if they want to? What are some things you're finding out about how you do that well?
I think you should just talk with them and let them, first of all, know your goal, what you're trying to do. And I think once they know what you're trying to do, they can tell you about how to do it best for your particular office or your particular boss.
And catch them on the bounce. That when you've done something, let them know what you've done. It's when you get back to them and provide them a copy or a description of what the outcome was, they appreciate that. Too often receive it, and it makes them more interested in helping you in the future. Okay, what's another one you're learning about how a professional prospers?
In the same sense, when you meet the personnel, the key support personnel in the organization, I think it's important that the language which you use, specifically in talking about fellow colleagues, that you be careful that you don't make any derogatory remarks or any remarks that can jeopardize your own position. Because oftentimes, being new in an organization, you may not know somebody as well as the people who've been there for years, and so they have a different light on that person that you do not. So therefore, it's kind of a give and take situation. You can listen to what they have to say about other personnel, and just don't give back anything that you don't have a lot of knowledge of.
Don't knock a color. Right. Don't disparage a color. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. What's another one?
I think you have to be sensitive sometimes about the kind of information that you pass on. I've made that mistake earlier in my internship where I passed on some information that I shouldn't have, and I learned you just have to be careful what you're saying. There are some things that your supervisor may pass on to you in confidence and will not say to keep this between us. You just gotta have to be sensitive about that.
How do you find out what stuff is like that? Because as a professional, you've got to get a reputation for keeping a confidence. And particularly when you're new in a situation, you may not be able to tell what other people are sensitive about. How do you find out?
I guess you would ask.
Well, Dean Biller, I really want to thank you for allowing us to
it was a great pleasure. I think the
sit in on one of your
enjoyed it.
classes and
right.
coming down here to chat with us for a minute on the beautiful USC campus. I would like to ask you how you see our network operations, being able to help city, county, state, and federal employees throughout the country access some of the fine courseware that emanates from the School of Public Administration here at USC.
Well, Bill, I think it's going to work both ways. The genius of the American society has always been to try to learn from the best experience wherever that's happening. Most often that happens in localities and states spread all across the country. Sometimes it happens at the federal level. But what we need to learn how to do better is how to access that experience quickly, make it available broadly, and develop our capacity as a learning society. I think the kind of system we're working on here is really going to promote our ability to do that. Not only will we be able to give the experiments in the highest quality that's now known, visibility and form in the kinds of courses we're working on, but we'll be able to develop connections with these communities and states all around the country and begin to pull that material in on a much quicker basis than is normally possible. So I think the whole society is becoming a real learning society. Professionals and citizens all through this country are learning how to do that better. And I think these kind of cities are really going to accelerate our ability to do that. So I'm very excited by this project.
How many city, county, state, and federal employees throughout the nation do you think will be interested in partaking in part or all of these courses which will be offered for credit?
I think as the track record builds up, the quality of the material becomes clear, its relevance to their particular experience, as that gets clearly established, I think a very large proportion of them are going to be interested. And that means for some general courses like how to manage public organizations, how to get higher levels of productivity, how to work with increased fiscal constraints. That will appeal very broadly to managers both in city organizations, state organizations, and federal organizations. As we get more experience, I think we'll also learn how to connect with very large communities that are specific to unique areas, like large federal establishments or large state capitals or large systems like city planners as a group or social security processing centers or health delivery systems. So I think the number of people who are going to be interested in this, both from the professional side and the citizen side, may be rather large.
What do you see in the near future? The advantages of using modern communications technology will be to serving the population as a whole, not just in courses for city, county, and state employees and government agencies, but in other areas, the healthcare sciences and accounting as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's going to have an enormous impact, and it's tied to what's happening in the society. I think we're discovering that we just can't do everything that might be nice for some. And since we can't do everything, what we've got to learn how to do is do that which must be done as effectively and productively as possible in order that the resources for the real quality of life things are still available to people. And I think that's something that's being learned in society and in the public sector of the society very quickly. And the big challenge before us is how to let those successful experiments that have historically taken sometimes decades to move from small communities or towns or individual states into the national arena, how to accelerate that movement so that when the communities in California and Colorado and Connecticut and Florida and these other areas, where experimentation is rapid and deep in its qualities, and the rest of the nation, that gets harvested, and that's going to be a really important boost to the productivity of the public sector in the society.
Well, that's one of the things we're so excited about in this network, of course, is being able to bring the best that's now available in the country and make it available for the first time to everyone throughout the country.
That's right.
Now, I'd like to speak to you, the cable operators throughout the country, personally, about this major project that we've undertaken to take the finest continuing education programs available in the country and make them available for the first time, not only in major metropolitan centers, but in the rural areas throughout the nation. And I'd like to ask you to contact me personally if you have any suggestions or any thoughts and ways that we can better serve your community, not only your city, county, state, and federal employees in your area, but your practicing professionals and people who are interested in adult education as well. And I'm sincere when I say, please call me directly. I will talk to you. You can phone me at our offices in Irvine, California. And I want to thank you very much for your time.
You are watching the American Educational Television Network. The programming you have seen today is largely introductory in nature, a look at who we are, what we intend to become, and why this new and unique meshing of education and communications is destined to become a vital part of the America of the 1980s. Beginning in early 1981, ATN will present a wide-ranging choice of high-quality education programs for practicing professionals. Until now, such continuing education has been largely unavailable to individuals on a live basis, and then only on limited occasions and in an inadequate number of geographic locations. In the 1970s, the United States sustained a series of setbacks that are now recognized to have seriously weakened the nation. These occurred in nearly every area of American life, ranging from international and domestic affairs to business and economic matters. As a consequence of this, few Americans need to be reminded that today our nation stands at a crossroad. In the decade of the 80s, whether the quality of our society remains the envy of the world will largely depend on the collective and individual use we now make of our precious resources. Foremost among these is the utilization of the educational process at every level in a manner that will exploit, rather than be overwhelmed by, a rapidly developing technology. This is a challenge that faces us all. The development of the American Educational Television Network was undertaken as one important means of answering that challenge. It is the commitment of ATN, working in concert with far-seeing and respected members of the cable TV industry, to develop to a higher and more functional state the present standards and effectiveness of both education and communications. We shall endeavor to accomplish this through utilization of the best that advancing technology can provide in the areas of education, electronics, and communications. Within the 50 United States, there are more than 30 million practicing professionals and city, county, state, and federal government employees as well, who have a demonstrated need for such ongoing and advanced forms of education. If you are one of these individuals and would like to explore further the opportunity of attending your professional course in a far less costly but much more practical manner, contact American Educational Television Network at the address which will be shown in a moment. The American Educational Television Network is designed specifically for those who are interested in or who require ongoing education as a condition of advancing or just remaining current in their respective fields of specialization. For further information, contact American Educational Television Network, 2172 DuPont Drive, Irvine, California, 92715.